You're about to hear a story that will stay with you long after it ends. A little girl, no older than 7, walks up to one of the most powerful men in the world, Mark Carney, a man who has advised kings, queens, and billionaires. She looks him straight in the eye and asks the kind of question only a child could ask. A question so simple, yet so profound. It stops him cold. Her voice trembles just a bit as she says, "Do you believe in God?" What happens next isn't just an answer, it's a moment that reminds us all why we search for meaning, even when life gets complicated. Stay with me, because what Mark Carney says will warm your heart. Mark Carney wasn't just any man. By the time this moment happened, he had already lived a life most people could only dream of, or maybe not even understand. He grew up in a small town in Canada, but his ambitions took him far beyond its borders. Over the years, he became one of the most respected figures in global finance. First as the governor of the Bank of Canada, then as the head of the Bank of England, Mark spent decades navigating some of the toughest challenges in the world economy. People called him a lot of things: brilliant, fearless, even cold sometimes. But no one ever accused him of being soft. His job was numbers, policies, and decisions that shaped entire nations. Not exactly the kind of guy you'd expect to talk about something as personal as faith. But today wasn't like other days. It was an event at a university, a place buzzing with energy. Students, professors, reporters, and curious minds filled the room. The air smelled like coffee and fresh paper from notebooks scattered across tables. Everyone wanted to hear what Mark Carney had to say about leadership, economics, or maybe even the future of money itself. And then she appeared. Out of nowhere, a little girl stepped forward. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. Her hair was tied back in 2 tiny pigtails, and her sneakers squeaked against the polished floor as she made her way toward the podium. You could tell she didn't care who Mark Carney was or what title came before his name. To her, he was just another person standing there. The crowd went quiet. No one knew what to expect. Was she lost, looking for her parents, or did she really have something to say? She stopped right in front of him, looked up, and spoke. Her voice rang out clear and steady, cutting through the silence like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Do you believe in God?" she asked. It wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. Those 6 words hung in the air, heavy with curiosity and innocence. For a second, Mark Carney froze. He blinked once, twice, and glanced around the room. Maybe he thought someone else might answer for him. But everyone was waiting for him. This wasn't part of the plan. There were no charts, graphs, or data points to explain away a question like this. Just a little girl asking something bigger than anything anyone else in the room could have come up with. What happened next changed everything, for both of them. For a man who had spent his entire career answering tough questions, this one seemed to catch him completely off guard. You could see it in his eyes. He wasn't sure what to say. The silence stretched out longer than anyone expected. People shifted in their seats, unsure whether they should clap, laugh, or hold their breath. Finally, Mark leaned down slightly, bringing himself closer to the little girl's level. His voice softened, losing the formal tone he'd used earlier during the lecture. "That's a very important question," he said. The crowd murmured quietly, sensing that something special was unfolding right in front of them. Cameras clicked softly in the background, capturing every second of this unexpected exchange. Mark took a deep breath before continuing. "You know, when I was your age, I thought about God a lot too. I wondered if there was someone watching over us, making sure everything worked the way it was supposed to." He paused, glancing at the girl again. She hadn't moved an inch. Her wide eyes stayed locked on him, waiting for more. He smiled faintly, almost like he was remembering something from long ago. "I've seen a lot of things in my life," he went on. "Good things and bad things, times when people came together to help each other, and times when they didn't. And through all of that, I've come to believe that there's something bigger than us, something that connects everyone, no matter where we're from, or what we do." The room felt different now. The energy had shifted. It wasn't just a Kana session anymore. It was a conversation about hope, purpose, and the things that really matter. "But let me tell you something else," Mark added, leaning in a little closer. Even if I didn't have all the answers, I think it's okay. Sometimes the most important questions don't have easy answers. What matters is that you keep asking them. The little girl tilted her head, thinking about what he'd said. Then after a moment, she nodded slowly. It was as if she understood, not because she agreed with him, but because she felt heard. That's what made the moment so powerful. People started clapping then, softly at first, then louder. Some wiped tears from their cheeks. Others whispered to the person next to them, sharing how much the interaction meant to them. Even the reporters in the back, who usually cared only about headlines, couldn't stop talking about it. But here's the thing. This wasn't just a heartwarming story. It was also a reminder of something many of us forget as we grow older. Somewhere along the way, between jobs, bills, and responsibilities, we stop asking those big questions. We get caught up in the noise of everyday life and lose sight of the quiet moments that remind us who we are. Mark Carney didn't just answer the little girl's question. He reminded everyone in that room to pause and think about their own answers. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what the world needed to hear. Still, there was more to the story. After the event ended, something happened that none of us saw coming. Something that proved this moment wasn't just about a banker and a child. It was about something much bigger. After the event wrapped up, most people went back to their lives. Reporters filed their stories. Students discussed the speech over coffee, and the little girl disappeared into the crowd with her family. But for Mark Carney, this moment lingered. It stayed with him long after the cameras were turned off and the applause faded away. Later that evening, he sat alone in his hotel room, staring out the window at the city lights below. For a man who had spent years thinking about numbers, policies, and systems, tonight felt different. He couldn't shake the memory of the little girl's question, or the way she looked at him, expecting an honest answer. That's when it hit him. He realized something he hadn't fully admitted to himself before. All the titles, accomplishments, and accolades didn't define him. What truly mattered were the moments like this one, moments when someone asked a question so pure, so unfiltered, that it forced him to look beyond the surface and reflect on what really mattered. The next morning, Mark did something surprising. Instead of heading straight to his next meeting, he called his assistant and asked her to track down the little girl and her family. He wanted to meet them again, not as a public figure, but as a person. When they finally connected later that day, the reunion was quiet and heartfelt. The little girl's parents explained that she loved asking big questions like this one. They laughed softly, saying she'd been doing it since she was old enough to talk. Mark listened intently, nodding along as if every word carried weight. Then kneeling down to her level once more, he handed her a small notebook. On the first page, he had written just 3 words, "Keep asking questions." Her eyes lit up as she flipped through the pages. Inside, he'd filled the book with quotes, ideas, and thoughts about faith, purpose, and curiosity. Some were from famous thinkers, others were his own reflections. At the very end, there was a blank section labeled, "Your questions." "This is for you," he said gently. "Whenever you think of another big question, write it down. Don't ever stop wondering about the world." Tears welled up in her mother's eyes as she watched the exchange. Even the father, who had initially seemed reserved, couldn't hide his emotion. In that moment, it wasn't about politics, economics, or global influence. It was about connection, pure, simple human connection. Word of this gesture spread quickly. Someone posted a photo of the notebook online, along with a short description of the encounter. Within hours, it went viral. People from all over the world shared their own stories of asking big questions, and how those questions shaped their lives. One woman wrote about how her son used to ask why the stars shine so brightly. Another man recalled a conversation with his grandmother about whether heaven existed. Each story reinforced the same idea. We're all searching for meaning, no matter our age or background. What started as a single question from a child became a global reminder to never lose sight of wonder, to always seek answers, even when they feel out of reach, and perhaps most importantly, to cherish the moments when someone reminds us to pause and reflect. But the story doesn't end here. There's one final twist, one last piece of the puzzle that ties everything together. Weeks passed, and the story of the little girl and Mark Carney continued to spread. News outlets covered it, social media buzzed with reactions, and even late-night talk show hosts joked about bankers turning into philosophers. But for Mark, the experience wasn't just a fleeting moment of fame. It changed the way he saw his role in the world. He began incorporating lessons from that day into his speeches and interviews. Whenever someone asked him about leadership or finance, he'd pause and say, "You know, the most important thing I've learned lately came from a 7-year-old girl who reminded me to never stop asking questions." And then one evening, months after the event, Mark received a letter. It arrived without fanfare, tucked among bills and memos on his desk. At first glance, it looked ordinary, just a plain white envelope with no return address. But when he opened it, his breath caught in his throat. Inside was a handwritten note from the little girl herself. Her words were simple but profound. "Dear Mr. Carney, thank you for the notebook. I've been writing lots of questions in it. My favorite one so far is, why do people forget how to be curious as they grow up? I hope you keep asking questions too. Love, Lily." Mark read the note over and over again, each time feeling a strange mix of awe and humility. How could someone so young understand something so many adults struggled to grasp? He decided to write back. In his response, he told her about his own journey, the doubts, fears, and moments of clarity that had shaped him along the way. He ended the letter with these words: "Lily, you're right. Too often, we let the busyness of life drown out our curiosity. But if we can hold on to that spark, even just a little bit, we'll find our way back to what matters most. Keep shining your light, because the world needs more people like you." The two kept exchanging letters after that. Their conversations became a source of inspiration for both of them, and eventually for others as well. Mark shared some of their exchanges in a book he wrote later, titled Questions That Matter. It became a bestseller, not because it offered easy answers, but because it encouraged readers to embrace uncertainty and seek truth in their own lives. As for Lily, she grew up knowing she'd made an impact far beyond her years. People often asked her what it felt like to change someone as influential as Mark Carney. Her answer was always the same: "I didn't change him. I just reminded him of something he already knew." But here's the twist, the part of the story that still lingers in the air, waiting to be uncovered. Years later, when Lily was a teenager, she stumbled upon an old interview with Mark Carney online. In it, he mentioned that the day she asked him about God wasn't the first time he'd thought about faith. In fact, he revealed that his father, a man he rarely spoke about publicly, had once been a pastor. A decision to leave the church behind had haunted Mark for decades, shaping the choices he made and the person he became. That admission left fans wondering, was Lily's question truly random, or was there something deeper at play? Had fate brought them together for a reason neither of them could have predicted? We may never know the full answer, but one thing is certain: this story reminds us that sometimes, the smallest voices carry the biggest truths. And maybe, just maybe, the questions we ask aren't just for ourselves, they're for everyone listening. So what will your next question be?